Welcome in to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly Sunday public affairs program here at Catamount Radio. We call it Catamount Community Connection because we enjoy speaking with community leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. And the goal of the program, of course, to make our listeners aware of some things that are going on in Rutland County and throughout the state. And our show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. And just a week ago, this year's fair, the 179th, ended. And we have our special guest on today, Robert Congdon, who is president of the Vermont State Fair Associations and also the Vermont State Fair in Rutland. I probably didn't phrase that the way I should have, but anyway, he's a big wheel, and it's always good to have him on. So we're already looking forward, believe it or not, because I know how these things go. The minute you get finished with this year's whatever it is, you start thinking about the next year. And next year will kind of be interesting because it'll be the 180th Vermont State Fair, but it also will occur in the 250th birthday of the United States. So we're really happy to kind of project that anyway. But Robert, always good to see you. Welcome in. And we did talk about the fair last week with the mayor, and of course, it had only ended the night before with the Oliver Anthony concert, so I didn't have a chance to, I had no numbers, I didn't have any attendance figures and all that kind of stuff, but I was there every day except Friday, I think, so I made Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and it looked like there were really good crowds for most of the days. The weather, well, it didn't rain, I'll say that. It got pretty toasty, though, at times, so I'm sure that had some effect. But anyway, welcome in, and if we can, for a few minutes, let's talk about this past year. It was just over a week ago. And how did things go?
Well, I think we can be really pleased with the turnout this year. When everything's all in and tallied, it looks like we actually welcomed somewhere around 200 people more than last year. So we thought we were down on closing night. We were still tallying and still crunching numbers and still doing all of that. And then when everything was finally all taken care of and the last bean counted, so to speak, it looks like we actually were just slightly up, which is great.
That is great.
And of course, the thing that happens at the fair, which is what we can really only estimate, is who comes in between 9 and 11. Because once the gates come off, the count, there's no count at that point. So we know that we welcomed in each night massive numbers after the close, like it always has been. That's been that way for 50 years or probably 100 years. So yeah, it was definitely exciting, definitely great turnouts. Like you say, the weather, it didn't rain. We'll give it that. But boy, Tuesday and Wednesday were hot. Yeah. there's no way around it. But folks still came out, even in the hot and humid weather. We appreciate that. So I hope everybody listening knows that I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, we just continue to hear positives. We continue to hear people saying that they appreciate and like what they're seeing. They like the improvements that we're making. Even some of the new departments that were just getting off the ground, like Fish and Game getting back off the ground. There may not have been a full display to see this year, but we're gunning for next year and looking to grow those even further as well. So lots of excitement, lots of growth, and we're going to keep it up.
I know it's probably hard to talk about all-time records because at one point, and I don't know for how many years, it was more like a 9-day fair, right? It kind of... 10 days. Okay, so it went over 2 weekends, and obviously the numbers would not be comparable to one that's just 5 days, but it gave me a pretty good feeling, kind of like the old days, especially Tuesday, which was the opening day. I think there was a lot of pent-up excitement for the fair, and I went down... I think we were there starting around 4:30. My wife and I went down and stayed till about 7 or 7:30, and it was just a packed midway, and everybody was having fun. As you say, it was a little toasty, but it looked like everybody was having fun, eating, spending money, and having a good time.
Yeah, I think the reality is, and you're right, it's hard to judge those old time numbers from back, when you get into the 80s and 90s and even back to the 70s. It's difficult to judge, on the spectrum where we are. And I realize we've got a lot of inflation since then as well. But we're hearing from numerous vendors. We're hearing from the carnival, who was here during those time periods, that they are knocking on the door of what they used to do in 10 days.
Wow.
In 5,
no kidding.
which is exciting. We certainly want to cross that hurdle. We want them to do better than what they did in 10 days, which we certainly, as a fair board, are hoping for home runs every night for 5 days. And, we also go into it with in the back of the head reality of, it's probably not exactly going to be how it's going to happen, even though we hope for it. But definitely it's encouraging to hear the vendors say that. It's encouraging to hear the carnival talk about, people are coming out, they're happy with results as well. This carnival came into the fairgrounds in 2016, I think it was. They were right at the date change, which was the main reason for the date change. And the promise was that they would grow as we grew, and they've held up their end of the bargain. I mean, we've got more rides each year. We've got more vendors, more games. There was a few years in there back, 17, 18, 19, where people, one of the biggest feedbacks that I got was, we want to see more games on the Midway. And now, boy, this year you walk down that backside, it was just solid games, which is exciting. That's positive to hear that those folks want to come back. They're independent contractors, and they need to make the decision for themselves. Is Rutland worth it to go to? And we're growing in number each year of folks that are looking at that, and our concessions as well. Some of the concessions come with the carnival itself, but we also handle a pretty large number of concessions on our end, and we're running wait lists now for a couple things that we've got too much of that we can't book any more in, and those folks, they know they're first on our list if somebody ends up for some reason needing to back out and change. But we're getting more and more calls. And the other thing that happens has been exciting the last couple of years is the folks coming into the treasurer's office on closing day, Saturday, and saying, "Here's my deposit for next year already. I'm not even going to wait for my contract. Yep. Please take this and apply it to my account so that I'm here next year." And that's a great feeling as well. It tells me that we're getting back to where we need to be. We still got a climb to make. I don't make any secrets about that. We know we've still got progress to make, but we're getting there, which is exciting.
We're talking to Robert Congdon, who is the president of the Vermont State Fair at Rutland and also president of all the associations that put fairs on throughout the state. And I don't know if you guys, I'm sure there's a little bit of a competitive nature, talk to each other about, hey, were you up or down this year? Because we were up, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, we all talk.
Yeah. Is it pretty much true throughout the state that the fairs are on a rebound?
Yeah, I think everybody's experiencing positive numbers. I think the most recent conversation that I've had, and actually a couple folks on the board came down from Addison and visited me when we were going, obviously, this last week. The consensus is folks are coming out. The consensus is it's been a hot summer, and that's having some effect. So this business is so weather dependent. There's just no way around it. I mean, we could have 90 degrees and 90% humidity like what we experienced a couple days, or we could have, as we're sitting in the studio here, 70 degrees and perfect humidity outside. That would be perfect fair weather, and probably would have boosted our numbers a little more. But, we have to... The old saying, you can't complain about it because there's nothing you can do about it. So we're going to take what we get and we're going to move on. And I think everybody's having similar conversations. So
the Oliver Anthony show went off pretty well from what I heard.
Absolutely. Had some conversations with Eric from the Paramount and on our side as well. And we couldn't be more thrilled. It was a phenomenal turnout. And not only that, just a phenomenal show. He did a great job. He's a great entertainer. And And I think, we've all received nothing but positive compliments on it, and folks got to really experience a great show, and great numbers for that show. So we're excited.
So looking back at this past week, and again, we're talking to Robert Congdon from the fair. The fair is now a week over. They had more people attend this year than last year. Were there any sort of really surprising bright lights for you? Or I guess conversely, is there anything you wish you had done a little bit differently in terms of going back and changing things for next year?
Sure. Well, hindsight's 2020, right?
True.
So we have to, So as we're looking at it, the one thing that was off this year that we're looking at and trying to decide what to do is for the fair shows, the grandstand was off a little bit this year. So even though the folks are up, we're looking at a positive number, the grandstand did set us off a little bit on the financial side. So we're assessing our grandstand entertainment. We're looking at what we had this year, looking at, what drew people out. There's some things that never will go away. The Demolition Derby always is a packed house, so we know that that's not going anywhere. And really also, the board's got some decisions to make, but Pond Hill has really grown into something too.
Yeah,
it's got a great following, and it's also got a great following with the participants. I mean, there was a great number of participants this year. So, we're looking at that. We are looking at, we ran a free grandstand on Wednesday for the tractor pulls. Not necessarily a great turnout for that. It was the day that everybody thought it rained in Rutland, and it didn't. We got multiple calls of, well, you guys must be closed. It's raining. And the rain line that came across the state literally went around Rutland. So whether or not we're going to try that again or not, there's some conversations surrounding there. If I'm being perfectly honest and being perfectly open, I guess the disappointment for me was we thought flat track motorcycle racing was going to bring more people out than it did. And we had heard a lot of buzz last year after the event that folks didn't really understand what it was, didn't know what it was, and then they saw the videos and were like, oh, we'll come out to that next year. And we opted to try it again. It's a show that requires, it's an event that requires a lot of preparation on the fair board's part. Folks out literally the night before over most of the night prepping. So whether or not we're going to do that again is a question. The board has a meeting next week, and they're going to be looking at all these things and assessing all of these things and making some decisions. And Eric over at the Paramount's always got his eye open even now for, hey, what potentially is coming our way next year for entertainers that we can pick up on as well. So lots to look at.
I was going to ask you that, and I don't know who was the one. Maybe it was a board consensus that picked Oliver Anthony this year, but whoever it was, whether it was a single person or a group, did a heck of a job, because again, you and I talked earlier when we were back in June prior to the fair that every now and then it just seems like everything works out perfectly. You've got an entertainer that's coming that's still on the way up, and you can sort of afford that person. But right before they come, they have a blockbuster hit. Yep. And it seemed like that happened this year.
In Rutland's history, that's been something that has happened a lot. Even back, folks don't realize, that in the 80s and 90s and even in the 70s, some of those big name artists that were here were on their climb when they came. And it's a great thing when you can pick up those artists and bring them. And, in some cases, 2 hits down the road, people are going to be like, I got to see them. I got to see them in Rutland. So it's a great strategy. There is a group of people involved. But of course, Eric over at the Paramount, we can't thank the Paramount enough. They do a great heavy lifting for us as far as, he really is the one that's got the eyes on the market and making sure that, hey, this is an option. Are we jumping at it, or are we going to go for something else? And it's phenomenal. Oliver Anthony, like you say, I don't think could have worked out any better. No. It was a phenomenal, I think literally 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, he just had another hit that hit number 1 on the chart. Yeah. So he just seems to be on a streak, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down yet. And everybody got to see him and hear those hits. So that was great.
Yeah. I can remember Charlie Pride way back. I don't know whether he was already sort of an established artist or not, but I can remember going to the fair and seeing him. Jack Healy used to kid around. And he'd say, "Yeah, I went and saw Grandpa Jones, and I had no idea who he was."
Yeah, Grandpa Jones was here. Ronnie Millsap. There's just so many different names that were here, and really were such. They really did. They put Rutland on the map to a certain extent. That we were a place. We were a legitimate venue. And it's great that we're, I think, getting reestablished in the market. So that's great.
We're talking to Robert Congdon, who is president of the Vermont State Fair every year at Rutland, and looking forward already to the 180th fair. I know it'll be in August. I don't have the dates memorized, but we'll certainly be letting you know.
18th to the 22nd.
Okay, I figured you'd know. And also, as I mentioned, is in charge of the all the fairs that happen in the state. And most of them have already probably happened by the time you hear this. I think Tunbridge is still left. Yep. The Champlain Valley Fair is going on, I think, as we are recording this. We're recording it on the 20th, and it'll be on the air this coming Sunday. I'm not sure who else. I can remember there was another fair somewhere along the line. It hasn't happened yet, I think.
Yeah, so Champlain Valley will be kicking off about the time this airs. Orleans will be early September, right after the Labor Day holiday. And then Tunbridge kind of wraps up the state after that. So we've got 3 to go.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit. And again, just to summarize, fantastic crowds this year, more than last year. Very successful. If as Robert said, we could have, dovetailed 73 and humidity in the 50s, it would have been absolutely explosion of people. But as it was a very, very successful year. I always take the MSJ booth as sort of another judgment, if you will. And I did see Dick Densmore's comments in the newspaper, and it was really well done, I thought. And when they do well, you know that at least the food end of things is going well. And I did stop in for my I don't have the sausages, but I do have the hot dogs there. And they were delicious, and it's a great event for them. And a lot of, you see people, like I said to you a couple times, I only see them every year at the fair.
Yep.
But that's kind of like the tradition. But let's look ahead, if you want, with some of the other events, because the fair doesn't end the events that happen at the Vermont Fairgrounds or the Vermont State Fairgrounds. There's other events coming up in August, September, and October, right?
Yeah, so actually I think while we're airing here is going to be the Eurobuilt Car Show, which is a great event. Scott does a great job putting that on, like all of the car shows, for charity. It's just that, they're very philanthropic in what they do. So the Eurobuilt Car Show will be happening on the fairgrounds. We also look ahead into September. We've got the Monster Truck Show, which will be coming in on the 13th, which I know a lot of people put that on their calendar. That's turned into a great event. The fair doesn't run that one. We actually are leased for that, but they just do such a phenomenal job. And we're seeing a lot of people coming in from all over the place for that show as well, which is exciting. We do have the Fall Demolition Derby, which is going to include the Vermont State Championship for our area as well will be included in that Demolition Derby. And that's going to be running on, I think, October 4th, I think, is the actual Saturday. It's the first Saturday in October.
It is the 4th.
Okay, good. I got that memorized the right way. October 4th will be a Demolition Derby, and then we turn right around after that and have Vintage Market Days, which will be the next weekend. Columbus Day weekend is when that kicks off, and we'll have the vintage folks in. And they do a great job. They do a phenomenal job. And then there's other events that are mixed in there. At the end of September, we've got the Old Timers Horse Show that 4-H puts on. We got a few other events that take place. And at that point, it's winter, and we've got to drain water so it doesn't freeze. Yeah. And we close up and wait for spring. So
I'm not familiar with I don't know if it's the rules or the sort of tradition of the demos, but if someone wins a demo derby, they probably, because it would have been impossible not to get bumped, they can't use that again. But is there anybody that was in the demo derby just completed at the Vermont State Fair that might go back into this one coming up?
Yeah, so to qualify for the Vermont State Championship, they can anybody who's won a demolition derby in the state can run. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of the rules. I leave that to Tommy and Annette Woodbury. They do a great job. But they have as far as folks can check their Facebook page for the rules because they post them for every show. But they allow those folks to come in and basically crown a champion for the state out of all of those winners that ran, whether it was Addison or whether it was up in Caledonia, or all over the place. They can come down and they can participate in the championship event and crown a winner at the end. So that's going to be, it's always an exciting time. It's always the heavy hitters too, because they're the winners and they're the ones that are out looking for that crown. So they do a great job with that. And so this year, that's going to be a part of the fall show. Those tickets will be on sale here in the next few weeks, probably early to mid-September. We'll get those tickets on sale, and folks can come down and enjoy one more demolition derby before the year's out.
Okay. We're talking to Robert Congdon from the Vermont State Fair, president of the Vermont State Fair here in Rutland. And we've got about 9 minutes left here in the show for this week. And I'm glad that we were able to get you in quickly after, the fair closed a week ago to get a report, because I had a feeling that based on the Tuesdays and the Saturdays with the crowd, and that doesn't always mean that everything is going to dovetail. Like maybe people come, but they're not as free with their money as they might be one year.
Yep.
But it's always good to at least get a report. Don't want to put you on the spot, but if you can come up with any suggestions for the Vermont legislature to get involved with the process, because I know that there's a certain amount of regulatory scheme that you have to go through. And I'll just kind of throw it wide open if there's anything you think that we can do. We do have legislators that listen to this show, and maybe some of them aren't even aware of some of the stuff that goes on that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I think, certainly we continue to deal with the water issue. You know that. It was great to have Lieutenant Governor Rogers was down on Monday before we opened.
Yep.
And I was able to take him around and kind of give him a bird's eye view and show him directly some of the locations that are being talked about for our water treatment facilities. So that was good, and I think we need to continue having those discussions because they continue to be a struggle. They continue to be a problem for us. Literally the area that is being looked at for one of our major treatment facilities, I didn't actually go out and do a physical count, but probably had 65 cars parked in it. On Saturday for sure. We were tucking cars everywhere we could on Saturday. We almost went to our back lot, which we rarely go to, which certainly was a good sign for the turnout. But so we're continuing to have that. We've had some, you and I privately have had some conversations about potentially a small amendment to the ride. There's a ride law in the state of Vermont, which basically is being looked at is in order for timeliness and the fact that Vermont and the way things are conducted, kind of extending out like a 30-day type rule, which right now it's a little tighter than that, and essentially every ride that's in the state of Vermont on any fairgrounds is inspected and has to be inspected. But giving the ride companies some ability, just because of the fact that those inspectors, because Vermont doesn't have any, I know in our case in Rutland, our inspector has to be booked in from Rhode Island. So they have to travel in to do their job and to do what they do. And so I know that's one thing we've been talking about, whether or not we can maybe tweak that just to make it so that those companies have the ability to still make sure they're compliant, but give them a little bit of a better window than being right on top of an event and getting it done, because it can be a struggle. So
for folks that may not be aware, I know there's no ride companies in the state of Vermont. So everybody, and there's 14, 15 fairs, something like that, maybe it's 13, that has amusements for people to ride on, they have to depend on outside people coming in and setting up the ride. And if I'm correct, most of the time there's a schedule. So many of the same rides that were at the Vermont State Fair last week here will be up at the Champlain Valley Fair in Essex Junction this week. So you're right. In order for the inspector, because as I understand the law, it has to be inspected in Vermont, the ride itself, when it gets there. And the window is pretty tight if you're only talking about 7, 8, 9 days difference between the dates here and the dates and the next fair. And a lot of times that would make it really kind of tough.
Yeah, I mean, so that's one of the discussions that's being had. And I think you and I will certainly be talking a little more when we get into the legislative session in January. And, when it comes to the fairs, when it comes to the amusement companies, everybody understands this is an important thing. And certainly most of the states have a requirement in place. But making it so that it's attainable a little bit more reasonably, it's a little bit struggle. And not to besmirch anybody, but sometimes government paperwork turnaround is a difficulty. Sometimes it doesn't happen as fast as it probably could. So yeah, there's just some discussions on that side of things. But I think, what I really enjoy about our state, and you know this, Brian, because we come up to the legislature every February. The fairs visit the legislature.
Yep.
And I've been doing that now for, it's probably closing in on 10 years that I've been coming up. And one of the things that is so refreshing about the state of Vermont is we can have lots of partisan discussions. We can have lots of things that are across the spectrum. But by and large, in the Vermont legislature, probably aside from the water issue, there is bipartisan support for the fairs and how important they are to the state of Vermont. So that's a refreshing piece of coming up in February, and when we come talk to you and we talk about our stipend programs. For those who don't know, the legislature funnels some money into the fairs to help pay premiums. So folks who come in and enter contests, some of that money is backed by state money to help pay out premiums for the winners. And then we also get what's commonly referred to as seed money out of the capital grant program, where we can, I think the last few years it's been up to $30,000 or so that each fair gets to access, and we get to do projects. So folks that are coming into the Vermont State Fair and are commenting about how great our bathroom facilities are, we've been using it for bathrooms now for a number of years and actually built our last one this year. So we can start shifting some of that money to other projects now. But that's also a great asset. It may not fund the building of a building, but it at least gets it started, and the fairs can make up the difference and figure it out and get those things underway. So it's been, those things coming out of the legislature have really been a help to us for sure.
And again, most of the time, if you involve the very same people that are dealing with whatever issue it is in the discussion about how to make a law or change a law, you get better laws out of it, because you pointed out to me, and I never would have known that there's a tight sort of deadline about the inspection of the rides without you coming in and mentioning it. And then when you did, it made all the sense in the world. We're not talking about somebody that lives on wherever, Forest Street or Killington Avenue.
Rhode Island's a little ways away.
That can just drive down and do the inspection. So, I think if we do the right thing in the legislature and involve the very same people that are, that we're talking about. So make sure we have somebody from the Fair Association there when we tweak this. And if it's 25 days, great. If it's 30, great. But as long as it has common sense attached to it, I think we could probably get something done.
Well, that's right. And I think, like I said before, nobody's questioning the validity and the safety piece. It's just okay, we know this needs to happen. How do we make it so that we do it in the best possible way and do it in a reasonable way that everybody can, be compliant first and foremost, but also get it done in a reasonable time frame. I say this a lot, and not many people may even realize, but sometimes the turnaround, between fairs for these companies is 72 hours. So, I mean, in our case, little just detail, our ride company, as you said, they closed down on Saturday night, and they turned around to Washington County, which is running right now. So,
okay.
So like you say, there's limited numbers of amusements companies. They're doing their job, and they're getting around to all their locations, and doing it, as to the best of their ability with all the traveling, and making sure that, again, safety is paramount in the process.
Our guest has been Robert Congdon, president of the Vermont State Fair at Rutland, and our fair here just a week or so ago. Happy to report a very successful fair, and we hope that we will continue to stay in touch with you in the fall and in through the winter, and be able to promote the 180th Vermont State Fair coming up next August. And coming up next on the program, we're going to talk with Johnny Petrone, who served his last meal at Johnny Boy's restaurant a week ago on Sunday, and so he is retired, and the restaurant is closed. So I'm not necessarily giving any unfair advantage to a commercial establishment, because he can't take advantage of it. He's closed. But I want to talk to Johnny about some of the other restaurants and bars that he's owned throughout the years here in Rutland, and get some hopefully some pretty funny stories, if I know John well. So he'll be up next here on Catamount Community Connection. Robert, thank you, and stay in touch.
Thank you, and everybody plan on the 180th, August 18th to the 22nd, 2026.
There you go. We'll take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection, and we're coming right back. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly public affairs show here on all 5 of our Catamount radio stations. We just talked with Robert Congdon from the fair, got sort of a post-fair report. Things were very good this year, as you heard, with better than average attendance, and they beat last year's attendance by a couple hundred as well. And we're now thrilled, at least I am, to welcome in Johnny Petrone, who has a long and illustrious career, if you will, in bars and restaurants here in Rutland. And he and I go way back to the 70s, I think to the 70s. And Johnny, welcome in.
Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you.
So in order of well, first of all, I got to ask you, because you're not originally from Vermont, neither am I. How did you ever wind up coming to Rutland, Vermont, and when was that?
It was in 1972. My girlfriend at the time down in New Jersey, she was a hell of a skier. She said, why don't we move to Vermont? I was working in New York Harbor on tugboats.
Huh.
And I was commuting back and forth for a while, and that got old real quick.
Yeah.
So we moved up here and lived in Killington originally. In 1973, bought the Silver Dollar on Merchants Row and took off from there.
So that was a pre-existing. I thought for some reason you opened the Silver Dollar, but it was already up and running when you bought it?
That was already an up and running bucket of blood kind of joint. And we had to slowly, over about 6 to 7 months, we turned it around into where people could feel, the normal average person could feel safe walking in there without watching a fight break out.
Yeah. And that's where I first met you, I'm pretty sure.
You and Jack did a remote from there. I think it was 1974.
Yeah, Jack.
Cost me a lot of money too. I think it was $100 back in that day. That was a lot of dough.
Well, I still owe you that then, that's for sure. And it was a long, narrow bar, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was.
And Jack Healy and I would go, and that's where we spent some time, both on the radio and off the radio. Because I was going to ask you how the name came up, Silver Dollar, but somebody else had already named it. So you kind of took it
by
over.
the name of Jerry Kelly, I bought that from.
Okay.
An Irishman from up in Montpelier.
Yeah, interesting. And then you went to, again in order, we're talking to Johnny Petrone, by the way. So Silver Dollar, and the Back Home Cafe was up next. How did you go from owning the Silver Dollar to the Back Home Cafe?
Well, in 1977, I believe it was, I wanted to do more in the way of food, and I couldn't do any more food at the Silver Dollar.
Oh, okay.
the building just wasn't lent to it. So I know Willie Patton, who owned the back home at that time, wanted to sell, so made a deal. And I walked in as, well, we went to the bank, and I walked out as the owner. And he walked away into the sunset.
And you ran that for how many years?
Sold that in 1979.
Okay, so a couple of years there.
A couple of great years, as a matter of fact.
If I'm remembering correctly, Jerry Vaughn and
Tommy DiMartino.
Bobby, DiMartino, those were the two new. So somehow they found out that you wanted to sell the back home. And
they were both working for Ernie Royal. I believe they both worked for the Hearthside.
Oh.
A couple of great guys. And it was time for me to leave there. I was a restaurant gypsy most of my life. I liked to bounce around. So we made a deal, and they walked in, and then I opened up over in the Opera House, 1980, August of 1980.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get to that. But you mentioned before we started recording that out of all of them, and we'll talk about both Petrones and the Johnny Boys, and also kind of a brief interruption from the restaurant bar business ownership to the restaurant equipment selling of. But you said that the Back Home Cafe, if you had to look back, was probably the most fun, even though it was only 2 years.
It was a ball, because back then in Rutland, in the late 70s, early 80s, Rutland was a ball. You never know every day at the Back Home when you open the door who was going to walk in, what was going to come in, what was going to transpire. It was a lot of hippies, the total cross-section of people in Rutland at that time. And every day was fun. I mean, it was fun. Live entertainment. We did live entertainment. Some great talent came through that place. We had the farmers market on Sundays when Andy Snyder.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
He ran the farmers market, and they shut down Center Street. It was a major party. And then we do spaghetti, salad, homemade bread after that for $5. And everything was good. That was a great place. I had great staff, fantastic staff. And but time to move on to something else.
Yeah. And I can remember that was on the second floor of the building. I don't remember what was on the first floor, but I used to hang out a lot on Center Street. Murphy's was another place that was open. That was Will Patton, too, I think, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. And
Will and Jeff.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember Jeff Munger?
Jeff, yeah, he worked for...
one of the congressmen.
Yeah, up in Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
Whatever his name was.
But I can remember walking up the stairs to the Back Home, and we did have a great time. And then when Jerry and... what was DiMartino's first name? Tommy. When they took over, it was a little bit different, but it still had that sort of atmosphere.
It had a good vibe. And then they opened the Ritz, the deli downstairs.
That's right.
And they opened the Ritz nightclub.
Yep.
And then things went south, and life happens, you know.
Yeah. So what happened?
You would not want to have been walking up them steps when a beer delivery guy was bringing a keg of beer up, and he lost the keg at the top of the stairs and went crashing down, right through the window onto Center Street.
No kidding.
That would have killed somebody.
Yeah.
That's another interesting little vignette.
So were they the last owners of the Back Home?
No, a couple other. I think Peggy Clark and her husband. I think they ran it for a short while.
But obviously, at some point, it closed.
Yep.
And now it's something else.
It's a hostel. Some kind
That's what it is, a hostel.
The Yellow Deli people.
Yeah.
The 7 tribes from Pluto or LA.
Okay. We're talking to Johnny Petrone here on Catamount Community Connection. You could tell I'm having a good time talking with him about some old-time memories. So we have the silver dollar in 77? No, 74.
Opened in 73, sold it in 77.
Okay.
Then went upstairs for a couple of years, and then down the street and down into the cellar.
Yeah, and so after the Back Home was what we call Petrone's, because that's what it was. And that was downstairs in the Opera House.
The old Economy building.
Yeah.
The Economy store.
Yeah. Was the store still open when you started?
No, that was just a damp, dreary, big basement.
Okay.
But we saw potential there.
Yeah.
And Jeff Garris, who was a dear friend of mine from up in Killington, he did a lot of incredible design work, because he was, in my mind, he was a design genius.
Yeah.
And with help from him and some other great workmen, we got it open in a pretty short period of time. And the Rutland Savings Bank at that time was the owner of the building, and Tom Ryan was the president.
Yeah.
We did a handshake deal over the telephone, which you don't see from banks anymore.
No.
He said, "Johnny, how much money you want?" I said, "Tommy, I think $100,000. You got the money. Come over and sign some papers, and whenever you get a chance." Boom, that's the way it was.
Wow.
It was great.
I've been down because, of course, the radio station at one point was located in the Opera House. So I've been downstairs, and a lot of the bar, I think at the time, the last time I was there, it's still there.
It is.
And there's a bunch of other stuff that's just being stored there.
Well, Mark Foley and his son, whenever they do renovations in their numerous properties,
Okay.
they have a tendency not to throw anything away. Because you might use lumber or partitions or whatever, windows, and that's become the landing place for a lot of stuff. But the bar's still there. A lot of the woodwork and some of the decor actually is still there.
Yeah. So that was Petrone's, and that was in, what, 80, you said?
August 1980.
Yeah. And how long did that last?
That was there for a while. I sold out. My partner at the time was Martha Fredette, and things transpired, and I wanted out, and I sold it to her, and she ran it for a while after that.
Okay.
Then a couple other people came in after that. Yankee Fishermen and Garbos. And
Oh, yeah. So, these are all things I wouldn't have remembered unless you mentioned them, but that's ringing a bell.
Yeah, you got a memory for, you have a memory for good, the bad, and the ugly.
And
Mostly good.
Yeah. And from Petrone's, you somehow sort of transitioned to selling restaurant equipment, right?
Now, there was a big mistake between that and there. I opened up a seafood market, which I might as well put a lot of money into an ashtray and burn it, because that's what that amounted to. That was a loser.
Where was that?
On Strong's Avenue, which is now Greg's Auto,
Okay.
in that building.
Okay.
And that was a blip, but you learn from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
And so after the fish place, then you decided you would get into sort of another business.
Sold restaurant equipment for quite a few years, all over New England. Sold stuff. Met a lot of interesting people. Went into most of the restaurants in Vermont.
Yeah.
And Western New Hampshire, upstate New York. Yeah, it was good. Good.
And that building is still there. In fact, I think Casella has now taken that over. The Casella construction people.
Yeah, Johnny and Dougie, I think, own that together.
Yes.
Something like that.
So that's on Route 7. I don't know if it's in Pittsford or still in Rutland Town, Pittsford?
That's Pittsford, yeah.
Okay. And then eventually, after you, and I don't know what year it was, but you wanted to get out of the restaurant equipment business, and then came Johnny Boys.
Nope, there was a lot of stops in between that.
Okay.
A lot of them. We went to Maine, over in Saco, Maine, opened up did a total building reno on the Saco River, four stories, that was a big job. Nightclub, restaurant, for an investor from Boston, a good friend of mine. And we were over there for a couple of years in Maine. And then his wife decided to divorce him, and that put his whole financial world on hold. So we said, I don't like Maine. I just don't, it's a weirdo. It's a nice place to visit, not a good place to live, in my humble opinion, especially in Saco, Biddeford. If you weren't French Canadian, you were an outcast. So we came back to Rutland, opened a restaurant at Pico. That was another blip. That didn't work out too good, because little did I know that every condo they built up there had a full kitchen. So anyway, moved on from that and restaurant equipment. And then we did over at the lake, Lake Bombazine. We had Petrone's at the lake for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
At the Bombazine.
Now, I don't remember that, so I must never have been over there for some reason.
That was a good little gig. Beautiful. But a very short season, like 10 weeks max.
Yeah.
10, 12 weeks.
And then eventually up to Killington for what was Johnny Boys.
Well, we did buoys on South Main Street at the old Fairmont. Me and Wally did that.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But that property didn't work out. It was a very expensive property to rent. Very expensive. And we lived out our lease and closed that up. And then couple of other little ventures, and then we went up to Proctor Pittsford for 9 years. We ran the food beverage up there. Great gig, greatest people in the world at that country club, believe me. 9 years up there, 9 years up in Killington. And in 2010, we opened Johnny Boy's down here on Woodstock Avenue.
Yeah.
I'm running out of years, man. I really am.
Well, you've now retired.
I'm done.
And hopefully you'll have a chance to do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to travel, if you want to just sit around and relax, you could do that for sure. For those of you that don't remember, the Fairmont was where there's I call it Doc in the Box, which is probably
That's what it is.
a bad thing to say, but it's one of those urgent care places. So that now is where the Fairmont was. And that was a favorite spot for a lot of people. I can remember doing hockey meetings in there with Barry Van Gerbig, who was the Rutland High School coach, and Claude LaPearl, who was the MSJ hockey coach. And I had the Raha Otters. And we used to go in after practice and tip back a few. And so, yeah, I do remember you being at the Fairmont. I wasn't aware you were up at Proctor Pittsford. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty good deal.
It was a great gig up there because Johnny Valenti at that time was the head guy from the board of directors up there, and him and Hank Pelkey and Oli, a bunch of great guys up there. They made it very comfortable for me to be there, and there was a hand-in-glove operation. I can't speak more highly than those people up at Proctor Pittsford.
Okay. And so then to the mountain with Johnny Boys, and then back down into Rutland, where it's still there, even though it's closed, and you're retired.
Yeah, it's closed as of the moment. Hopefully, see what happens in the next couple of weeks. It might be resurrected if everything falls into place.
But not with you at the steering wheel.
No.
Well, you don't have to.
We'll see what happens, but I'd like it to have. In my opinion, the optimum outcome of that building would be stay as it is as a restaurant, because it's outfitted as a restaurant. The infrastructure is there, the equipment is there, and if we can pull it together with a couple of parties, then hopefully it'll keep on as it was.
And how did you come to decide that location would work for you on Woodstock Ave? I don't even remember what was there.
That building has had an interesting history over the years. It was a bakery distributing center for Ward Baking. Back in the day, it was, I think, a Dunham shoe store, a Dexter shoe store.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I do remember that.
Then it was Green Mountain Boys. And I bought that from the Abatel family and gutted it and made it into a restaurant.
And you've had good times there, I would imagine.
Great
you see a
great
ton of people.
Great customer base there.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
Rutland is a really good town to do business in.
Yeah.
If you do your best to put out a good product. It's a great town to respond to you, and they'll support you.
And, of course, your name is associated in a very positive manner with everything you've done, so that, all you had to do, I imagine, was open the door there, and people found you. And
they did.
I drive by there all the time, and the parking lot's full, and I know that your customer base is there all the time for you.
Yep, a great customer base and a great employee base. I had some of the best restaurant employees that I've had. Probably, 500-600 employees over the years. And some of my employees at the last venue were some of the best employees I've ever had.
Yeah. We're talking to Johnny Petrone, who is the, I don't know if you're the ace of or the GOAT, the greatest of all time, but to me you are, because you started here in the 70s with the Silver Dollar and went from that to the Back Home, and then Petrone's, and then Johnny Boys, and it's been a good ride for sure. Yeah. We need to take another break here on our show, here on Catamount Community Connection, and we'll be back with Johnny Petrone in just a second. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. And our show brought to you, by the way, by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. And just concluded was the 179th Fair, so the 180th Fair coming up next August. And today, we did talk earlier with Robert Congdon in the early part of the show, but right now we're talking to Johnny Petrone, who has owned and operated multiple restaurants and bars, and also for a bit of time sold restaurant equipment. So I think we've covered all the restaurants and the bars, but you made an interesting point earlier, Johnny, that when you came in the early 70s, I think we both got here about the same time in 72, Rutland was a whole different place. We had probably close to 23,000 people, maybe even a little bit more than that. We were the second largest city. I do remember that. Burlington was number one, and then Rutland was second. And now we're like fifth or sixth, and we're somewhere around 16,000 people. So that would be one difference, but it does seem like the whole city and the county has changed a lot over the years.
It has. The way I view Rutland over the last 40 years, close to 50 years that I've been here, is that it always went through cycles of up and down, economically, up and down. Always seemed to bounce back to a better level. But I don't feel that vibe anymore, especially downtown. Maybe it's me because I'm old, but I just don't feel it. And remember, a couple of things have happened. Back in the day, before there was a lot of restaurants and a lot of lodging places up on the access road, people would come and ski up in Killington and Pico, but then they had to come back down the mountain to stay. All the hotels motels on Woodstock Avenue, family run at the time, would be packed. And the restaurants downtown would be packed with skiers, because there was virtually only a couple places to eat up in Killington at the time. I think Otto at Steaks and Things was the first guy up there. I know Otto was the first guy that had a salad bar. and he was a dear, dear friend of mine, still is an absolutely great guy. But if you went there, there was 4 things on the menu: steak, 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 and steak. And that was it. And a really good salad bar. But they had to migrate down the mountain to sleep and eat and have fun.
Yeah, so that is different. We now have the access road full of places to eat and drink and stay.
Right. They don't have to come down here no more.
And, we do have, hopefully, a new hotel being built in what is still called the Pit. The Berwick was here in 73. That burned, and it's been empty since then. But we have at least the pretty good potential that we're going to have a hotel there. The Paramount across the street has also undergone renovation and expansion. So I'm not sure that we're still in that sort of bad thing here. I look and I can see some stuff that on the horizon that's going to be good. But that's just me.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, the Paramount has been fantastic. The people behind that, with vision and money, made that happen. But there's been a change in the personal demographic in Rutland, where there's, I don't know how other way to put it than to put it. There's a bunch of, there's a lot of people here who, I don't know where the hell they came from. They blew in from somewhere, and they've affected the quality of life in Rutland to a disturbing level. When you talk to merchants around town who have been victims many, many times of shoplifting, because these miscreants know that there's no punishment, that affects everybody. And it's not a good place to be. The solution to that, I have one, but I better not mention it. We'll leave that up to the politician to try and solve it. I'm a little more of a Genghis Khan type person.
Well, I don't mind checking in with you on occasion either to get some direction on that. So, yeah, hopefully, and that's a statewide problem, but certainly Rutland has seen its share, maybe more than some of the other cities in the state. We seem to have shouldered a lot of the homeless burden, and that's part of, I think, that sort of dragging down feeling that some of us have. But I do hope that things start to turn around. So we got a couple minutes left. And you can tell me to go jump in the lake if you want, but what are you going to do now? I mean, what's your sort of, you've already retired. And as you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, maybe that building will reopen with somebody else, and that would be great.
Well, if we manage to pull a deal together with a couple of parties that were interested, I'm going to do my best to make it a success. I'll work with them any way I can.
Okay. So you're not just getting on a ship somewhere and sailing away?
No, I spent enough time on ships. We're going to go to Aruba and plant my backside on the beach for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what kind of doors open. I gotta do something. I just can't sit around. So I'm going to do something. I'm not sure what it might be.
Okay. Well, hopefully...
Maybe a hitman for the mob. No? Too old?
I don't know. Maybe the age would allow you to get in and out and do your job without a lot of people noticing. Who knows?
Senior citizen.
Yeah.
Hitman. That'd be
well,
good.
I, for one, hope you stay in the area, regardless of what it is that you're doing. But, the Four Seasons are still here, and it's a beautiful state, and we have a lot to offer people. So hopefully you're not just going to disappear somewhere.
Not unless the old man upstairs takes me home.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been a ball. Johnny Petrone, who again ran in order the Silver Dollar, the Back Home Cafe, Petrone's, then sold the restaurant equipment for a while, and then Johnny Boys, both up on the mountain and here in Rutland on Woodstock Avenue. And it's been a long, fun ride. I know you know a ton of people in the area, and we're going to miss you for sure.
Well, I'll be around until I'm not.
Okay.
Brian, good to see you, buddy.
Same here. Thank you very much, Johnny. It's
Thanks
been a
lot
pleasure.
For your time.
So that's our show for this week, and we will see all of you next Sunday here on Catamount Community Connection.